the internal family systems model. This model helps to bridge the gap between clients and the parts of themselves that they're struggling with and causing this disruption within themselves. And I feel like through this lens, it also gives them a different way of understanding themselves, and it also empowers them to change the relationship within these different parts. I'm Beverly Wong. I'm an associate marriage and family therapist. I help individuals and couples navigate their journey towards healing and growth. And just a little background on myself. I am born and raised in San Francisco. I'm currently located in the Bay Area, so I'm very privileged to serve my community here, but also all across California, since I do provide therapy virtually as well. In terms of my education, I completed my master's of art in marriage and family therapy with an emphasis in clinical counseling from Touro University worldwide. And currently I'm part of Kwan Psychotherapy, an Asian American women-owned group practice located in San Francisco. So here I work collaboratively with adults, teenagers, and couples from diverse backgrounds and identities. So that's kind of what I'm doing at the moment. What my passion lies in is supporting those who are on a journey to heal from past trauma, also healing from or managing anxiety and depression, and learning the art of regulating their emotions. A particular focus of mine is working with the Asian American community. With that, I help navigate all the complexities that come with identity development and emotional well-being. You know, being second generation and Asian American myself, this work is very near and dear to my heart. Familiar with all the unique challenges that come from being bicultural and, you know, having to juggle all these contrasting values, opinions, and expectations that come with living with multiple cultures. And yeah, so that's kind of a little bit about me. More about my background though. Before I started at Kwan Psychotherapy, I had the privilege of providing therapy in community mental health settings. So I had the opportunity to support individuals from marginalized backgrounds, and I provided therapy for both survivors and perpetrators of domestic violence. And I realized that this is where I, was able to witness the impact of trauma, but also witnessing how resilient we are as human beings to kind of redefine ourselves, take power of our stories. So this work really fueled my passion for trauma work and helping those reclaim and redefine their identity. So I think self-healing looks very different from person to person because everyone's journey is so unique. But from my perspective, self-healing involves liberating ourselves from the negative patterns and stories that hold us back from being happy or being the best version of ourselves. And it's all about moving towards inner peace and embracing our sense of wholeness. I feel like in order to do this, it starts with being curious and being willing to explore all parts of ourselves, including the ones that we might have, the ones that we don't like very much, or we try to hide them away or sweep under the rug. And by observing ourselves with this lens of curiosity rather than judgment, we begin to truly understand the reason behind our actions, like why we react the way we do, why certain patterns persist, and why sometimes we feel stuck. And once we're able to look underneath the surface, we are able to uncover the roots of our pain. And this is where I feel that self-healing transformation begins, where we're able to cultivate self-compassion, even for those parts that we once disliked or maybe we were scared of. And to me, self-healing is about learning to embrace ourselves as a whole, with all of the scars, the flaws, the quirks that we might have. And I feel like that's when we are able to unlock that door to growth. So yeah, having this new sense of awareness, understanding, and compassion actually empowers us to make change, to make maybe a different decision rather than continuing to behave in the ways that no longer serve us. So I feel that, once we heal ourselves, we end up showing up for all parts of ourselves and make decisions that feed our soul and nurture our bodies rather than reacting in ways that maybe bring us short-term relief, but long-term pain at the end of the day. For me, like embracing difficult emotions. So what that looks like for me, at least, and I find to be very helpful for both me and my clients, is when something comes up, like you're feeling angry, you're feeling sad, like naming that instead of trying to push it away all the time. Like naming it and I feel like by naming it and putting it out in the open, you have a little bit more power over it too, rather than continuing to suppress it until there's all this pressure built up inside you. And yeah, I think also mindfulness helps. I know that's kind of like a hot keyword that people like to throw around, and I used to think that too, right? Before becoming a therapist and actually trying these methods, like mindfulness, that's just something people say they do. But it doesn't really help. But there's so many ways to be mindful. Like you said, there's meditation, right? Kind of being able to calm ourselves, our physiological responses, and kind of calming our brains. But there's also like for example, one thing that I like to do is, when I'm eating a meal, putting down the phone, turning off the TV, and really experiencing the food, experiencing the taste, what we're eating, what we're feeling. And that's actually been really helpful, as a way to kind of relieve and cope with anxiety, but also gives us space to reflect on ourselves. And as we continue to do it, and at least for me, at first it was really hard. I was always thinking about what I got to do next. But as they continued to do it, it was like, oh, okay, it got easier. And then I realized like, oh, wow, I am in control. I do have the power to make changes. So I think that's what mindfulness is too, is as you continue to do it, you realize that, by taking these small steps, you are able to make big change. Yeah. So with my own clients, the first and foremost thing I like to do is provide them the space to share their story without any judgment and criticism. I feel that many of our problems grow bigger when we continue to suppress them, but when we talk about them out loud, it's almost like we release a pressure valve in us. And aside from that, I work with my clients to explore their internal world. So that way they're able to better understand themselves, foster self-awareness and compassion. And I know in the previous question, I mentioned, accepting all parts of ourselves. A lot of what I do is utilizing parts work, which is related to the internal family systems model. This model helps to bridge the gap between clients and the parts of themselves that they're struggling with, and causing this disruption within themselves. And I feel like through this lens, it also gives them a different way of understanding themselves, and it also empowers them to change the relationship within these different parts. Like, oh, this part that depends on alcohol, and I really don't like this part. I find that when there is this knowledge and compassion towards these difficult emotions, and we learn why we do the things we do, I notice that my clients find a sense of peace within themselves. And to go even deeper, I also draw from psychodynamic and attachment-based theories to help them better understand the root of their pain. So this involves exploring their cultural upbringing, their relationships with their parental figures, childhood experiences, and all of these things inform our core beliefs. So I find that, this is really useful when I'm working with clients. But with that, that's kind of more of the depth work. With that, I also think it's important to have the tools to, that you can reach for in their day-to-day life, so that we can make these small shifts. So with that, I draw from cognitive behavioral and dialectical behavioral therapy. So this could be, like mindfulness training, coping skills, ways that we can just cope with all of life's challenges. So to sum it up, I use a blend of depth work and also behavioral therapy. So that way my clients can feel better equipped to handle any challenges that might come up. Understanding which each partner comes from, their upbringing, how they bonded with their parental figures. So having that deeper understanding can give context to, the patterns that they're seeing in the relationship, maybe why they keep getting stuck in these similar fights that keep occurring. And then I also utilize Gottman's method for more of the tangible skills. So like now that we know this information, what are some things that we can do to maybe communicate better or build intimacy, build closeness, and things like that. So yeah, I mean, with attachment theory, I think that is what I usually, I draw from attachment theory a lot when I work with couples. So, in the session, I know everyone is so eager to fix things right away, but for me, when I first work with couples, maybe the first month is, talking about things, but also I can observe how you guys are communicating, how conflicts are resolved, and, noticing that, oh, maybe this one partner is more anxiously attached or avoidantly attached, and how that kind of triggers each other and causes this little dance. And even though there's fights about different things, usually when we get down to the bottom of it, it's kind of about these same themes, maybe fear of abandonment, or feeling overwhelmed that my partner is, coming to me with such high emotion. This causes this vicious cycle. With internal family systems, I also feel that I also use a little bit of that in my couples work too. Because now not only are we, we all have all these parts that interact with one another, but now you're in a relationship and those parts are interacting with those parts. And maybe your partner's anger is triggering your fear. And so, it kind of goes even deeper than that. I find that, yeah, attachment-based theory, Gottman's method, and also internal family systems, I find really helpful with couples. I think patience is something that maybe I didn't mention before, but everyone thinks of healing as this straight path. And once I try something different, I make the change and then I am healed. But it's such a windy path with twists and turns, and sometimes it feels like you take one step forward and you take two back. But that's all part of the healing journey too. So just having patience and grace with yourself. I think curiosity is very important for self-healing because without curiosity, we aren't trying to understand ourselves a little bit better. I know a lot of the times we work from a place of self-criticism and judgment that only pushes us away from really truly wanting to know why. So I think fostering that curiosity, like instead of judging ourselves so hard for what we do, maybe like asking like, oh, I wonder why we do that. Or I wonder where this comes from. When did this start? Was there something that was very stressful during that time that made me do a certain behavior? Or so I feel like fostering curiosity is very important, a first important step of self-healing. And for compassion is also something I emphasize in healing too. So curiosity and compassion, I feel like go hand in hand. So, with curiosity, you are able to understand and become aware of why you do the things you do. And with that comes compassion. So then you're able to say, oh, okay, this isn't just like I'm choosing to do this. It's I was affected by so many things. And I can understand that it's really hard for me at this time. And so with that compassion and acceptance, I feel that it helps to empower you to change instead of being stuck in the cycle, like, oh, I'm such a bad person, I'll always do this. But curiosity and compassion creates this sense of openness. Again, understanding why you do the things you do, but also like, okay, now what do we do with this information? And that can be empowering too. Making this decision to start healing can feel very scary and comfortable because change is uncomfortable. It's, we're creatures of habit. And when we break a cycle, it can be very scary, even if it's for the better. So even if you don't end up making the changes that you'd like to see in your life right away, just know that you can always try again and it's never too late. And it's probably really cliche to say this, but I find it to be so true. And I mentioned this before, healing is not a straight path. It's windy, there's twists and turns and surprises at every corner. And there are going to be times where you feel like you're taking a step forward, taking two steps back. But again, like having that patience and grace with yourself, letting yourself know that, hey, you can always try again. If something doesn't work out once, it doesn't mean that, it's over, your chance is over. It's, take it as a learning experience and continue moving forward even though it's hard. And I would say that if you're interested in healing and you're curious about therapy, I say give it a shot. Even if you're not sure about what you're trying to get out of therapy, you'll actually be surprised about what you would learn about yourself as you continue. So like even though I'm a therapist myself, I'm also someone who has gone through years of therapy, and it has been life-changing for me. Like I never knew why I felt the way that I do and why I do the things I do. I felt everything was normal. This was how it's supposed to be. But through therapy, I was able to learn more about myself. And it might seem very trivial, right? Like, okay, you learn about yourself. But that really opened up the door for me to be able to say, like, okay, well, what's next for me? Like, I don't have to stay in this pattern if I don't want to. And so, yeah, I totally advocate for it. I know maybe I'm biased because I'm a therapist, but, just person to person, I wouldn't be advocating for therapy if I didn't find it so helpful. So I say give it a shot, give it a try, and be open to it.